This tutorial you will be able to introduce primary keys to your tables. So let's use our dating app. As of now, dating app is the database which we were using, right? And let's show what all tables we have here. If you are new to the channel and have started learning SQL or Power BI, just go back to the tutorials and you will be able to see the more videos, and you can go there, you can start learning. Now we have these many tables with us. Let me describe one of these tables. Let's say users, maybe, right? So we have uh, fields: username and email. These are the types, they are nullable. It is written as yes. We have studied not null constraint and default constraint in the previous tutorials. You can go back and learn it from there, right? And the default value of them is null. So let's what basically, if you see this key column is empty, it doesn't have any value. What is this key column? In our tables, I could insert rows that are identical to one another. It's totally fine to have the rows with some name, age, or username or email of these users, but it's make really hard to work with these rows and distinguish them from one another. In real scenario, if we have some data like this, we make sure to add some sort of unique identifier, and this is really common thing to do in the world of SQL. Meaning, like if you take admission in any of the institute or university or college, or you might have studied in some schools, right? You receive some unique kind of enrollment number or student ID or roll number, right? That makes you distinguish from other students even if they have same names, right? We So these are the unique IDs to the databases in which your data is present, right? That means in terms of that, we add unique IDs to rows so that we can differentiate them even when all the other data looks same. Let's add a numeric ID and start at 1 and then goes to 2, 3 and 4. It should be an integer that starts at 1 and then goes up one by one for each row. For example, if let's say, let me create one table here. Create table with users, maybe 4, right? Here I have user ID, which is int, right? And this is not null. This ID or roll number is not null, it should be present for everyone, right? Then we have some name of the user, and which is in varchar, let's say maybe 75. Then we have email IDs, which is varchar maybe 100, and we have these three columns. So what it will do, it will create one user ID with not null columns, right? But what will happen, this user ID will be, let's create this table and let's describe it now. Users 4. So it is saying that user ID is not null, integer, and name and email are varchar and they are nullable, and we have not defined any default value. Now, for example, if I have another table, let's say users 5, and we have a similar way, we have this data, these many columns, right? Name and this user ID as well. So here, if it is okay, let me just try creating it, or else let me insert some data here. Insert. into users 4. What we have to insert user ID, then we have to insert name and email. Let's say we have some values here as user ID may be 1, then name is user 1, then we have email as user1 at the rate someone.com, right? If we try to insert it, it is inserted. Now if we similarly create some other entry here, say with same ID, right? Now let's try to showcase this. Select star from users 4, right? This ID is same. How then we distinguish these two people, right? These two users. So that comes the concept of primary keys. So what are primary keys? Basically, primary keys will be a unique identifiers. Unique identifiers means they will be unique for every individual. So primary key is a fancy way of saying a unique identifier. Once we define a table, we can add on primary key constant to some column, usually an ID column which is numeric. So let's create another table. Create table, maybe users 5. Here we will be having the same columns. So we will be see how we can define primary key. So here instead of not null, we can define primary key, right? This will define the primary key to user ID, right? Let's execute it, and then we will try to describe users 5. The users 5 is a table which is basically C. This will be user ID will be integer. Pri key means this is primary key. And if you see, we haven't applied not null constant to any of these columns in user 5, but the primary key column, that is user ID, is automatically assigned to not null as no. That means it cannot be null. So here we don't need to add not null constant to our primary keys. So what primary key will be? Primary key will be unique for every entry, and it would not be null. So let's say if I try to insert the same row, same data over here into my users 5 table, what will happen? It will add this data, right? And if I try to select star from users 5, that means I am displaying all the data present in users 5, whether it is one row or two row, how many rows it is, it will display that. So what it is saying, it has null values here for all, and it is saying this user added. Now if I try to execute this statement again, what will happen? It will give me some error saying that duplicate key 1 for key users 5 primary. That means we have already present 1 as a key for user ID, and it cannot be duplicate as it is primary key, right? Now if I try to change it to 2, it will get inserted, and again what will happen? We will be able to see this another user with same name and same email. Email cannot be same anyways, but this is for an example. But this is distinguishing for ID too. So for example, Akanksha. Akanksha is a name that a class or a institute can have multiple girls with name as Akanksha, but they will be like, we cannot consider them in a single database as a single student. Every student should get some ID. that is unique, and that id will distinguish different girls with the different with the same name as Akanshi, right? Now let me try to add one another entry there. I will not be defining user id there. What will happen? As I told you, user id cannot be null, right? It will again give me error. User id doesn't have a default value because this is required, and user id cannot be null. So either we should have a default value, but unique primary key is unique identifier, and it cannot have duplicate values. So if I define default there, and if I again try to insert another value where this id is not present, then again that will give an error that duplicate record is entering. So whenever you try to fill up some kind of form, either it's a job application form or it is something admission taking form, or there it doesn't ask you for the id, right? Because you don't know how many students are already present in the institute, or how many students are actually passed out, or what's their record is and what id you need to present. So in their backend or in their database, it is automatically handled out. So how that is handled out, we will be discussing in the further tutorials, right? So I am just repeating or categorizing you, uh, memorizing you that primary keys are not null and always unique, and these primary keys help you to distinguish your records with the help of that unique identifier. And unique identifier is just a primary keys is just fancy name of saying a unique identifier. So another way of defining primary key is, we have one more table. We are defining, let's say, users 6, and we have again user id, name. User id is integer, name is varchar 75, email is varchar 100. Now you have a large volume of data, not large volume of data, but you have multiple columns, and you are scrolling up and up to see what id should be the primary key. So if you forgot to define that, you can add at the last primary key, and in the bracket you can add the column which you want to add the primary key, right? User id. And here, so if you observe that primary, in the between of primary and key, there is a space, not a underscore, right? So this is how we define primary key. There are two ways to create a table with primary keys. First one is this one, where you assign primary key with the column name as it is, and another way is where you define the primary key in the bracket column name at the last, right? So this is, there are two ways table is created. Let us describe this table user 6. Resultant will be the same, uh, no difference, right? So as it is accurately, it is saying user id is integer, it is key as primary key, pri means primary key here, and it is not null, right? So this is how primary key is defined. In the further tutorials, we will be coming back and see how this ID or unique identifier or primary key works automatically in backend without duplicates, and how does backend or SQL engineers handle it, right? And we will be further covering more tutorials and topics.